In the deep, dark cave, our protagonist wakes up with eyes wide in disbelief, immediately scanning his surroundings. A question echoes in his mind: where am I? This place is completely unfamiliar. His head fills with fragmented memories. The last image is the cold steel of a demon tribe sword and the sharp pain piercing his chest. He whispers in a trembling voice, "Indeed, I have died by the sword of the demon tribe." This truth, cold as ice water soaking into his soul, makes him fully aware of his situation. A thought flashes through his mind: that's right, this must be the rumored reincarnation. Rumors say that a soul can reincarnate into another body after death. So curious and astonished, he bends down to look at himself. What have I turned into now? Suddenly, a system image appears in his mind, displaying a strange line of text. Behemoth cub, causing his mouth to drop open. His memories connect with knowledge from the old world. A behemoth is a disaster-class monster, requiring the strength of an entire nation to handle its chaos. Emotions churn within him. In his previous life, he was a knight sworn to protect humanity. How could a knight who once put humanity first be cruelly transformed into the very creature he once fought against? He heads to a nearby pond for water, but screams upon seeing his reflection. He has turned into a cat. Meanwhile, an elf named Aria wakes up to a new day, quickly changes clothes, and takes her twin swords to hunt monsters. As she ventures forth, he stands stunned by the lake, pondering the irony of his fate. However, before he can gather his thoughts, a strange noise alerts him to a nearby threat. A slim creature approaches, clearly intent on devouring him. With no choice left, he checks his abilities and discovers the skill absorb attribute. He shouts rock howling, and a powerful sound wave transforms into a sharp stone spike that shoots at the creature, defeating it instantly. However, he soon faced another issue. He hadn't eaten or drunk anything since reincarnating. Overcome by hunger and thirst, he reluctantly tried eating monster meat. To his surprise, it tasted sweet, and consuming it allowed him to acquire the creature's skills. Excited by this discovery, he decided to store a slime for later use. Meanwhile, Arya navigated a labyrinth by boat, presenting her badge to gain entry and using a crystal to illuminate the dungeon's dark corridors. Back at the pond, he continued his efforts to adapt to his new form. He defeated a wyvern, gaining the ability to fly, and a C+ class minotaur, from which he acquired the skills Fireball and Ice. His streak of victories continued as he overcame a B-class golem, earning the Iron Body skill, and a C-class serpent, which granted him Poison Fangs. Ahead, he spotted a glowing treasure chest and eagerly opened it, finding a giant crystal inside. His heart swelled with anticipation and joy, but his excitement was short-lived as he realized the chest was a trap. The crystal ensnared him, teleporting him to another dark location. A powerful force overwhelmed him, and he found himself standing on the back of a huge earth dragon, an S-rank monster. The dragon roared angrily, insulting him for disturbing its sleep. Desperate to defend himself, he attempted to use rock howling again, but the stone spikes had no effect on the formidable dragon. Activating Iron Body, he made his body as hard as iron to dodge the dragon's crushing attacks. The dragon acknowledged his resilience but still found him too weak, attempting to crush him with its massive foot. In a desperate move, he activated the Ether Edge skill, slicing through the air with sharp light and damaging the dragon. Utilizing the Flight skill, he soared back into the air, escaping as the Earth Dragon howled in frustration. Exhausted and bleeding, he collapsed, feeling helpless and losing consciousness. Just as he was about to surrender, Arya took care of the kitten. She fed him, patched up his scratches, and even changed clothes right in front of him. The smug little shit is having the time of his life, chugging milk like a king and snoozing on her massive chest, like it's a 5-star resort. Naturally, he decides that he's going to repay her kindness by becoming her self-declared protector. One day, Arya suits up for a mission, and the orange freeloading knight thinks, "Hell yeah, I'm coming too." She's chopping through goblins in the dungeon like she's at an all-you-can-slash buffet. Meanwhile, her furry sidekick is just vibing, thinking, "Damn, maybe she's not as useless as I thought." But then, the plot thickens. A goblin mage shows up. This one's not just waving sticks around, it actually knows magic. The little green shit hurls a fireball at Arya, who's caught completely off guard. Enter the kitten, ready to be the hero of his own story. He shoves her out of the way and goes full psycho mode, slashing the goblin's face with his tiny murder mittens until it's dead. Arya, stunned and probably wondering how her cat's cooler than most adventurers, lets him crash on her chest as a reward. Honestly, the cat's playing this life thing on cheat mode. Later, at the Adventurers Guild, things take a turn. Arya bumps into Kasman, a greasy red-haired creep who practically oozes bad vibes. He's all over her, begging her to join his party. When she shuts him down, again, the asshole tries to grab her ass. Big mistake. The kitten launches himself at Kasman's face like a furry missile of rage, biting and scratching like he's trying to peel the guy's skin off. Kasman freaks out and tries to swing at him, but Arnold, the guild leader, who looks like he moonlights as a stripper, steps in. Kasman scurries off humiliated, while the guild cheers like a bunch of drunk NPCs. Arya decides to officially adopt her tiny attack cat, naming him Tama. The name's ugly as hell, but Tama's too smug to care. Now Tama gets to chill around Arya without anyone raising an eyebrow. Meanwhile, Arya kept grinding out her daily quests, hoping to snag a promotion at the guild. The guild was its usual chaotic self, booze flowing, people laughing, and everyone too drunk to care about anything. Arya eventually made her way to the fields with Tama in tow. Instead of giving him the belly rubs he deserved, she decided to tickle him in ways only a slightly drunk person would think is funny. Tama let out a dramatic yowl, probably regretting every life choice that led him to this moment. Arya, drunk out of her mind, decides it's time for a bath, and because she has zero boundaries, she drags Tama in with her. The kitten, probably thinking, "What fresh hell is this?" eventually jumps in. As he floats toward her, assets, you can practically hear him thinking, "This is both the best and worst decision I've ever made." Arya starts pouring her heart out. She talks about her shitty childhood, how demons trashed her village, and how the legendary sword saint saved the day. That's the moment she decided to become a knight. Now, she's questioning if she's strong enough to live up to that dream. Tama, being the smart little furball he is, knew all about Alicia the Sword Saint. She wasn't just strong, she was the real deal, a legend. To comfort Arya, Tama rubs his face against hers, doing that magical cat thing that makes people feel better. It works. After a cozy bath, she heads out and the villagers greet her like she's royalty. Meanwhile, Tama is perched on her chest, clearly enjoying the free ride and basking in her popularity. At the guild, Arya meets up with Arnold, the twinkish guildmaster, who has some bad news. The creep from before, Kasman, had filed an official complaint against Tama. Why? Because the kitten shredded his already unfortunate face with those little paws of justice. Now Kasman, the poster boy for menace to society, demands that Tama be put down. Arya, desperate to save her beloved cat, gets on her knees and begs for mercy. But Kasman, the walking grease stain, has a plan. He proposes a duel to settle the matter. If he wins, Arya has to marry him. If she wins, she keeps Tama. Arya agrees without hesitation because, frankly, she'd rather die than let this clown harm her kitten. Arya doesn't even hesitate before agreeing to the fight, even though the odds are stacked against her. She's a D-rank adventurer going up against Kasman, a C-rank bully with a massive ego. Kasman, in all his cowardly glory, tries to save face by calling on the villagers to fight for Arya, so no one can accuse him of picking on someone weaker. Shockingly, or maybe not, the villagers want nothing to do with this mess and leave Arya hanging. Kasman smirks, thinking he's got an easy win. But oh, how wrong he is. Enter Tama, the tiny orange knight with a big attitude. Without a second thought, the kitten steps up to defend his master. Kasman, too dumb to realize he's signing his own humiliation slip, accepts Tama into the duel. The fight kicks off, and Kasman charges in, sword swinging, convinced he's got this in the bag. Arya, desperate to protect Tama, rushes at Kasman but gets a solid kick to the stomach for her trouble. As she hits the ground, Kasman bursts into laughter, because nothing says big man like kicking someone who's clearly outmatched. Arya fights back with her knives, but Kasman dodges easily, throwing in a lame kitchen joke just to rub salt in the wound. Meanwhile, Tama watches his master struggle, knowing it's time to stop holding back. Kasman, feeling extra gross, starts harassing Arya mid-fight, calling her his future wife and generally being the creepiest creep to ever creep. That's the last straw for Tama. The little furball makes up his mind to annihilate Kasman's fragile masculinity once and for all. As Kasman taunts Arya, Tama charges in with his iron body skill, snapping Kasman's precious blade like a dry twig. Before the red-haired loser can process what's happening, Tama activates Aether Howling. sending him flying into a conveniently placed set of dark, bushy trees. Casman ends up dangling from a branch, his broken blade follows him, and lands in the most unfortunate spot, effectively ending his bloodline. With Casman defeated and thoroughly humiliated, you'd think it'd be a happy ending, but nope. Tama's magical powers are now out in the open, and the villagers start pointing fingers, looking like they're about to form a mob. Poor Tama assumes it's the end. In his head, he's already writing his final goodbyes and preparing for the pitchforks. As the battle unfolded, Anna realized something very important. Tama was definitely an elemental cat, given his ability to understand human speech and use attribute magic. The people around sighed in relief. In the end, Arya emerged as the winner of the match. The crowd erupted into cheers, celebrating a spectacular victory for Arya. A new day dawned, and Tama understood that, though he was a behemoth, he had been mistaken for a cat and now lived happily with his elf master. The next morning, Tama wakes up on his owner Arya's pillow and snuggles against her face. Arya enjoys the moment. Encouraged, Tama gives her pointy ear a gentle lick, which makes her react with a moaning sound. Startled, Tama jumps off the bed and watches her from a distance. Arya, looking thrilled, cheerfully asks for more cuddles, but Tama stays cautious. Later, the two head to Vulcan Ferreira, a blacksmith with tiger ears who warmly greets them. Tama is surprised by Vulcan's appearance, but she quickly approaches the kitten, having heard a lot about him. Arya formally introduces Tama, and Vulcan, charmed by the kitten's cuteness, asks to hold him. The elf places Tama in Vulcan's hands, and both women are delighted by his playful behavior. Tama, meanwhile, feels like he's dreaming, because everything around him seems so strange. Vulcan asks Arya what she needs, reminding her that her weapon is still being worked on. Arya requests special, durable armor for Tama, and Vulcan, excited by the challenge, agrees to create it. She takes Tama's measurements, planning to include adjustable magic in the armor since the kitten is still growing. While Vulcan works on the armor, Arya asks Tama if he would like to join her on adventures. Tama eagerly agrees, vowing to protect his owner. Vulcan works through the night, and by the next day, the armor is ready. When Tama puts it on, Arya is charmed by how adorable he looks, while Tama is amazed by Vulcan's craftsmanship and speed. However, Vulcan reveals that Arya's swords are a bigger problem. They're heavy and fragile, and despite reforging them multiple times, they don't suit her well. Arya admits she struggles with the swords, and Vulcan suggests they form a temporary team. By observing Arya in combat, she hopes to identify the problem and improve the swords. The team ventures into a dungeon where Vulcan showcases her strength by defeating goblins with her powerful hammer. Tama is impressed by Vulcan's extraordinary strength, having heard of the Tiger People's reputation, but never witnessed it firsthand. When a goblin casts a fire spell at Vulcan, she easily resists and counters with her enchanted flames, eliminating the monster in a single strike. Arya, inspired but nervous, faces an orc next. She hesitates but gathers her courage, using her acceleration skill to attack. The orc blocks and counterattacks, but Tama intervenes, using his magical shield to break the orc's axe. With the path clear, Arya finishes the battle, though she doesn't seem satisfied with her performance. Vulcan observes and explains that Arya's long swords throw her off balance, making her movements awkward. Arya asks for advice, determined to improve. Vulcan suggests they move to the next dungeon floor, where a suitable monster awaits for training. However, when they encounter weak ropers, Arya can't hide her frustration, wondering how these creatures will help her grow stronger. At the same time, Tama is worried that the ropers might grab his master Arya with their tentacles in an uncomfortable way. Vulcan reassures them that fighting these creatures will force Arya to focus on her movements, helping her improve her combat skills. With determination, Arya charges at the first roper using her acceleration skill, but the creature's tentacles force her to retreat. Observing the battle, Tama realizes that Arya's usual fighting style won't work here. Things get worse when the roper knocks her sword from her right hand. Even so, Arya refuses to give up and continues the fight with her remaining sword. Surprisingly, without the weight of two swords, her movements become much faster. With better speed and balance, she manages to dodge the tentacles more effectively and lands her first attack on the roper. However, during the fight, the roper breaks her remaining blade, leaving her unarmed. Vulcan quickly throws a dagger and the broken blade back to Arya, who uses both weapons to stab and defeat the creature. With her confidence restored, Iria charges at the second roper, moving even faster than before. She notices the enemy's slower attacks and realizes that her difficulty in combat stemmed from her mismatched equipment. With newfound precision, she delivers several swift strikes, cutting the creature's tentacles. However, the holes left behind release a sticky substance that nearly covers her entirely. Furious, Iria shouts that such behavior is only acceptable from Tama and attacks the roper with triple the intensity. She cuts off all its tentacles and slices its body in half, naming her new move Wind Blade. After the fight, Tama is thrilled to see how quickly Iria adapted and improved. Seizing the moment, he bites the roper's corpse to absorb its abilities. Though disgusted by the creature's bitter taste, Tama gains the powers to summon tentacles, spray infinite mucus, and crossbreed. Meanwhile, Iria continues angrily stabbing the monster's remains, still upset about what it did. After calming down, Iria admits she started using 2 long swords to honor the Sword Saint, but realizes they don't suit her style. She finds that shorter weapons feel more natural for her. Tama gently strokes her face, agreeing with her decision. Vulcan praises Iria's progress and suggests they rest before venturing further into the dungeon. Vulcan leads them to a safe spot protected by a philosopher's stone that keeps monsters away. Seeing the stone reminds Iria of her village being attacked, but she sets the memory aside and prepares to clean up after her battle with the ropers. With water nearby, Iria takes the opportunity to bathe and removes her armor. Tama quickly looks away, reminding himself that a knight must stay focused and not let distractions take over. However, Iria playfully calls him to join her, and he reluctantly enters the water with the 2 women. While bathing, Iria asks Vulcan about their main group. Vulcan explains that the group has split up, with some members changing priorities and others starting families. She then warns Iria to keep an eye on Tama because elemental cats like him can crossbreed with other creatures. Tama, remembering his newly acquired ability, suddenly feels awkward. Vulcan jokingly adds that when Tama grows older and more confident, no one will be able to stop him. He might even charm Iria herself. Tama, embarrassed by the remark, quietly pretends he didn't hear it. Tama silently promises to himself that he would never act on the strange idea Vulcan teased about, even though Iria seems to think it's a wonderful notion. She playfully encourages Tama to grow up faster so she can spend even more special moments with him. With that lighthearted exchange, the group continues their journey, eventually encountering a C+ ranked Minotaur. The sight of the high-level monster terrifies Iria, but Vulcan reassures her that she will step in if needed. This fight, Vulcan declares, will be Iria's ultimate test. Gathering her courage, Iria accepts the challenge and charges at the Minotaur. Confident in her skills, she uses her Windblade technique, but the attack barely scratches the powerful monster. Realizing the situation is worse than expected, Vulcan steps in with her hammer, but the Minotaur skillfully blocks her attack with its shield. Meanwhile, Iria makes multiple attempts with her Windblade, but the monster's strength and defense outmatch her power. However, Iria's speed allows her to stay ahead of the Minotaur's counterattacks. On her 3rd strike, she lands a hit on the Minotaur's eye, causing the monster to swing its club wildly and accidentally trigger a cave-in, trapping Vulcan under falling rocks. Tama leaps into action, using his Ether Howl ability to scatter the rubble and save Vulcan just in time. With the danger averted, Iria gathers her strength and charges at the Minotaur one last time, piercing its chest with her sword and ending the battle. Exhausted and stunned, Iria can hardly believe she defeated such a formidable foe. Vulcan, equally impressed, praises Tama for his bravery and heroism in saving her life. That night, the group returns to the guild to deliver the items they collected. Anna, the guild receptionist, is moved to see how far Iria has come, especially her ability to defeat such powerful enemies. The team celebrates their success at a lively tavern. During the festivities, Vulcan suggests forming a permanent team, nervously admitting that someone needs to maintain Tama's armor. Tama, sensing her sincerity, places his paw on Iria's hand and then on Vulcan's, signaling his approval of the idea. With the team officially formed, the celebration ramps up. As the night goes on, Iria and Vulcan drink so much they pass out on top of each other in bed, unintentionally squishing Tama between them. Stuck and unable to move, Tama also can't sleep, so he listens to the 2 women mumbling strange things in their sleep, some of which involve cats. Unbelieving what he's hearing, Tama retreats into his thoughts, leading him to discover an option to evolve into a second form. He contemplates whether evolving into a powerful behemoth would make Arya abandon him, or if staying a kitten would let him stay by her side forever. The next morning, Tama is still in his kitten form when he and Arya come across two men beating a defenseless little girl, accusing her of theft. Recognizing Tama as the elemental cat who defeated Kasmin, the men panic and flee without a fight. Arya comforts the girl and asks her name. The girl, Lala, looks down sadly when asked about her parents, revealing she's alone. Arya, moved by her plight, invites Lala to come with her. The group heads to a nearby church where several children happily greet Arya, clearly familiar with her kindness. Inside, the church caretaker, Anun, promises to take care of Lala. Watching Arya's compassion for these children, Tama feels a renewed sense of devotion to protect his master and everything she holds dear. Later that afternoon, Arya, Vulcan, and Tama visit the Adventurers Guild, where Anna officially grants Arya the C-rank title. However, the celebratory moment is dampened when Anna shares troubling news about the city of Leonard. She explains that many people have recently gone missing, believed to be the work of demons, and none of them have ever returned. Hearing this, Arya grows serious and asks Anna for all the details about the case. That's it for episode 2. See you in the next video.
Arya, the endlessly curious elf, couldn't stop pestering Anna for every detail about the case. Vulcan, the blacksmith, worried Arya might be biting off more than she could handle, but admired her determination to help others and offered her support. Anna added that the two warriors might catch the eye of a top-tier adventurers guild, the kind with high pay and even higher prestige. Suddenly, Cedric Ruin, a young guy in a tunic, burst into the guild like he owned the place. Everyone froze, recognizing him as the Duke's son from a famous family that manages labyrinths. Cedric, the picture of charm, greeted Vulcan warmly and assured her and Arya they'd be fighting side by side soon. Tama, the little elemental cat, remembered Cedric too. Years ago, during the infamous Devil's Twilight, basically Ragnarok 2.0, humanity barely survived a war against demons. A ridiculously overpowered kid known as the Grand Mage had saved the day, vaporizing hordes of demons. That kid, an absolute legend. Arya, being practical, wondered if their small group was ready for the dangers ahead. Anna, however, was too busy swooning over Cedric to care. She leaned into him for some awkward PDA, and Cedric, blushing, tried to remind her they were in public. Arya, ever the gossip, asked if they were a couple. Vulcan, with a knowing smirk, confirmed it, leaving Tama utterly confused. Back at their base, Tama noticed Arya looked anxious. The stakes were high. They'd soon be heading out to face serious dangers. Trying to cheer her up, Tama licked her face. Arya, thinking it was sweet, kissed him back. Tama was completely flustered, but decided not to dwell on it. The team hit the road and met their new allies. Danny, the silver-hailed swordsman. Howard, a humanoid monster. Keeney, the fiery redhead. And Marietta, another warrior. Arya introduced Tama, who became an instant hit. Keeney and Marietta couldn't get enough of him, treating him like a living plush toy. But the fun didn't last. Their carriage screeched to a halt. "Orc ambush!" Cedric casually told Danny to take care of it. With a flick of his sword, Danny sliced through the orcs like it was nothing. No magic, no tricks, just raw talent. Tama, watching in awe, dreamed of fighting alongside these legends someday. That night, the group reached the village of Leonard, where the locals explained their plight. People had been disappearing, and their last rescue team never returned. The most recent victim was a young girl taken the night before. For Arya, it brought back painful memories of her homeland's invasion. The villagers pinned all their hopes on Cedric and his team. Arya, the nosy elf, couldn't help herself and started prying into everyone's backstories, asking why they became knights. Danny didn't even hesitate. His family was dirt poor, and this was his way to pay off debts. Howard, the humanoid, had a similar story. Keeney? She needed the money to cover medical bills for her sick sisters. And Marietta joined to free her dad from slavery. And Marietta? Tama, the little elemental cat, was stunned. Even Arya looked like she regretted asking, but the rest of the group? Oh no, they weren't embarrassed. If anything, they were proud. They'd done their time in the Order and were now fighting for themselves. Then Cedric, the Duke's son, casually dropped a bomb. I'm not into women, so carrying on my family name isn't my thing. Apparently, he joined the order out of boredom and for the fun of slaying monsters. The rest of the team wasn't thrilled with his laid-back attitude, but hey, the guy got results, so no one argued. After dinner, it was bath time. The girls went to their side of the springs while the guys hung back, but soon some suspicious noises from the women's bath caught the boys' attention. Danny and Howard decided to sneak a peek. Just as they got close, Tama, the noble kitty, stepped in to defend the ladies' honor. With an epic aether roar, he sent the would-be peepers flying back to their corner, tails between their legs. Cedric, watching the whole thing, just shook his head. What is it with you guys and women? I don't get it. Meanwhile, the ladies finished their bath in peace, and the journey continued. The group arrived at the Leonard Labyrinth, where things were already heating up. A monstrous creature in the shadows watched them, muttering about how these so-called heroes were nothing more than snacks on legs. Clearly, he wasn't planning to let them leave in one piece. Right on cue, a pack of C-rank werewolves attacked. Howard, the group's tank, jumped in and used his taunt skill to draw their attention. The rest of the team spread out, slicing and dicing like pros. Cedric, as always, made it look annoyingly easy, slashing through his enemies with ridiculous grace. Even Vulcan, the no-nonsense blacksmith, was impressed. Arya wasn't going to let the guys have all the fun, so she jumped in too. Meanwhile, Tama analyzed the situation. The wolves, armed like they were on a Monsters with Style runway, were tough, but Tama had a plan. Instead of using his usual Aether Roar, he unleashed Water Roar, blasting through one wolf's chest. He followed up by taking out two more, leaving the whole team stunned. The little guy wasn't just cute, he was a total powerhouse. Back in the shadows, the labyrinth's owner was losing it. How the hell did my wolves get wrecked by a cat? He realized he might have to step in himself if things kept going like this. Back with the group, everyone was still in awe of Tama's skills. Turns out, their little mascot was far deadlier than they'd ever imagined. Arya couldn't stop praising Tama's strength. She even joked about wanting to be overpowered by him. Tama didn't know what to make of it, but figured it was best to ignore her and focus. She was still his master after all. The group moved into a room that felt heavy and unsettling. Everyone stopped as Cedric suggested caution. That's when Beryl Astaroth appeared, a demon who had survived the Ragnarok War. He announced that their journey would end there. Danny immediately accused him of attacking Leonard for revenge. Astaroth explained that Leonard was just the first step in his larger plan. Then, to no one's surprise, he summoned a group of trolls to attack. Cedric gave the order to spread out, but Astaroth quickly created a magical wall, cutting Tama off from the group. One of the trolls charged at Tama, but he fought back and tore its arm off. Unfortunately, the arm grew back almost instantly. Frustrated, Tama kept fighting as more trolls closed in around him. Cedric decided to handle things himself. He drew his sword, which radiated dark magic, and sliced two trolls in half with ease. Astaroth recognized the magic and muttered that it was the same power used by the legendary Grand Mage. Cedric didn't respond, but the smirk on his face said it all. Meanwhile, Tama was struggling. He tried using Stone Roar, but it barely affected the trolls. He thought about evolving into a more powerful form, but decided against it. It would mean giving up being Arya's trusted companion. Instead, he used Flame Roar, burning the trolls so badly that even their regeneration couldn't keep up. Tama managed to defeat them all. Astaroth, furious that his trolls were defeated by a cat, decided to intervene. Before he could attack, Vulcan hit him with her hammer. He dodged, only for Arya to strike at him next. Astaroth blocked her attack and mocked their teamwork. Vulcan swung again, creating a cloud of dust that blinded him, just long enough for Arya to use acceleration and stab him in the chest. At first, Astaroth seemed unfazed, but then the blade started glowing, amplifying the damage. He made one last desperate attack, hitting Arya with his dagger before falling. The team rushed to Arya, and Tama suspected she had been poisoned. Astaroth, before turning to stone, laughed and said, "She won't be the only one. Humanity's days are numbered." The team confirmed their fears when Cedric identified the poison as dragon poison, the deadliest kind. Howard used his shield to slow its spread, but they needed help fast. Back in Leonard, the doctor told them Arya had less than 2 days to live unless they got an Earth Dragon's eye. The group wanted to hunt the dragon, but Cedric explained they didn't have enough time. As Arya cried out in pain, Tama couldn't stand by anymore. He ran out the window, determined to save her. Flying through the night, Tama thought about how Arya had once saved him. Now, it was his turn. Tama returned to the ruins where he was reincarnated. The Earth Dragon he had faced before was waiting. The dragon mocked Tama for daring to return, but Tama didn't back down. He declared he would defeat her, though deep down he knew he couldn't win in his current form. Tama made the difficult choice to evolve, giving up his small, fluffy form to become a powerful behemoth, ready to fight for Arya. That's the end of episode 3. Thanks for watching. See you next time. The fight rages on as Tama in his monstrous form unleashes his flame-howling skill, a fiery attack meant to incinerate everything in its path. But the Earth Dragon isn't just some pushover. It counters by using its defensive skill and lunges straight at Tama, sinking its massive teeth into his neck. Tama's body goes limp, lifeless, and the Earth Dragon starts flexing, thinking it's all over. Just as the dragon's ego hits the roof, Tama's eyes snap open. Turns out, the beast let its guard down, and Tama wasn't about to let that slide. In a flash, he pulls out his Flame Edge skill, going straight for the Earth Dragon's other eye. It's a brutal move, but it works. Tama not only blinds the dragon completely, but also takes it down for good. But of course, there's a catch. As Tama prepares to rush back to his master, Arya, his monster form fades and he turns back into a cute, fluffy cat. He quickly realizes there's a time limit to his evolution. Annoyed but determined, he stores the Earth Dragon's massive corpse in his inventory and sprints back to save Arya. Meanwhile, back at the camp, Arya's party is in full panic mode, praying desperately for her recovery. The mood is grim, but their prayers are interrupted by a thunderous crash. They rush outside to find, wait for it, the Earth Dragon's enormous corpse sprawled on the ground. And who's on top of it? None other than Tama, looking absolutely wrecked, but victorious. Cedric wastes no time and shouts, "Don't just stand there gawking. We need the dragon's eye for Arya." While all this chaos unfolds, Arya is deep in a dream, trying to take her back to her childhood. She's just 13, living in her peaceful hometown when demons attack out of nowhere. It's a massacre. Elves are being slaughtered as the demons search for a philosopher's stone. They're ruthless, killing anyone who resists. The demons split into 3 groups to cover more ground. In the middle of this carnage, young Arya tries to escape, but her luck runs out. She runs straight into the demons. They demand to know the location of the philosopher's stone. Terrified, Arya freezes and in her panic pees her pants. Just as the demons prepare to kill her, an elemental cat appears out of nowhere, tearing into the demons and saving her life. Ever since that moment, Arya's had a soft spot for cats. Arya suddenly wakes up from her dream, and the first thing she sees is Tama sitting right beside her, looking smug and slightly injured. As if to say, "Yeah, I'm the reason you're still breathing." After the intense battle and treatment, Arya barely clung to life, but managed to pull through thanks to her friends' tireless efforts. Everyone stayed close, offering all the support they could. When she finally reunited with Anna, she hugged them so tightly that she burst into tears. Some time passed, but the toxin in Arya's body was no joke. She's recovering, but it's slow. She's not back to full strength yet. While Arya rests, Tama decides to head back to the local dungeon. He reflects on the fact that he saved Arya, but his behemoth form reverted out of nowhere. The transformation was incredible, but unpredictable, like a cheat code you didn't know how to activate or control. After Tama defeated the Earth Dragon, his evolution ability disappeared, but he realized he had gained the dragon's powers instead. Naturally, being the curious and impulsive cat he is, Tama went to the dungeon to test his shiny new skills. His first victim, a hulking minotaur. Tama gracefully dodges the bull's massive club swing and counters with Dragon Claw, summoning a spectral dragon that digs its sharp claws into the minotaur's back. Next, he unleashes Dragon Fang, summoning a ghostly monster's mouth that bites the minotaur and slams it to the ground like a sack of potatoes. After seeing the damage, Tama smugly thinks, "Yep, I'm rocking some S-rank abilities now." Just as he's enjoying his dominance, human footsteps echo in the dungeon. Emerging from the shadows is a maiden sniffing his lost helmet like it's perfume. She says, "I've finally found my strong man." But Tama, now back in his cute cat form, is baffled. Why is she acting like she knows him? The woman suddenly crushes his helmet and lunges at him like a predator. Tama, in classic scaredy cat fashion, bolts without a second thought and dives into a hole to escape. As she watches him flee, the woman vows to find him again. Shaken, Tama eventually sneaks back home and hides in his favorite spot, trying to figure out why that insane woman seemed so familiar. Those piercing eyes. The thought sends chills down his tiny spine. The next day, Arya takes Tama on a picnic by the seaside. She's dressed in her cutest outfit, ready for a day of fresh raspberries and relaxing in the sun. As they settle on the grass, Arya brings up her recovery, recalling how she heard about the Earth Dragon's corpse and how Tama was found injured beside it. For a moment, she wonders if her little kitty was the one who defeated the creature, but then she laughs it off, dismissing the idea. Instead, she lies on the grass, lamenting how she always seems to need saving, whether it's Vulcan, Cedric's group, or even Tama. Arya then recalls the demon attack on her homeland when she was young. She remembers how her people were slaughtered and the elemental cat that protected her was attacked. But before the demons could finish the job, the legendary Sword Saint arrived and wiped them all out single-handedly. That day inspired Arya to become a warrior herself. Years later, she left her village, vowing to be strong enough to protect the weak. But reality hasn't been so kind. Feeling emotional, she starts tearing up. Sensing her sadness, Tama rubs against her arm to cheer her up. Arya imagines he's trying to say, "You're stronger than you think, master." After the picnic, they visit Vulcan's workshop to pick up a new batch of equipment. Thanks to the fortune Arya earned from defeating Astaroth and selling loot from his trolls, she commissions lightweight yet durable weapons and armor made from orichalcum. When she tries on her new gear, she's impressed by its perfect balance of strength and mobility. Later, the trio sets off on a boat to the dungeon. Mid-journey, Tama uses the blessing of the Lion King, granting everyone resistance to fire and ice while making their bodies lighter. Arya is convinced that Tama, her ever-reliable kitty, is genuinely worried about her recovery. He's doing everything he can to keep her in top shape, even if it means risking his own 9 lives. During their expedition, the team encounters a goblin blocking their path. Without hesitating, Arya rushes forward, slicing through the goblin so fast it doesn't even realize it's lost its head. Pleased with her swift victory, she praises her new gear, courtesy of Vulcan, and the buffs Tama provided. But before she can bask in her glory, that crazy woman who chased Tama the day before appears again. She laughs wickedly, claiming that it's destiny for her and Tama to be together. Arya, trying to make sense of this madness, asks if the woman is an adventurer from Ruin. Vulcan takes one look at her outfit, more like a fashion disaster than adventurer gear, and doubts it. The woman smirks and says she was born from the shadows and doesn't know anything about Ruin or even her own name. Vulcan scratches his head and mutters that she's probably got amnesia, or just lost her marbles. But then the woman goes full crazy mode, declaring, with zero shame, that she wants Tama to father her offspring. Vulcan almost chokes on air while Arya calmly replies, "He's just a kitten, lady, he's not even capable of that." Tama, horrified, hides in the safety of Arya's melons, prompting the mad woman to realize the cat already has an owner. She's clearly frustrated, but Arya, in her endless kindness, offers the woman shelter. She reasons that leaving her out here would make her an easy target for slavers. The mad woman perks up and asks if she can stay with Tama. Arya, hesitant but fair, agrees and promises Tama she won't let the woman hurt him. Though uneasy, Tama trusts his master's judgment. On their way home, Vulcan asks the woman what she'd like to be called. She shrugs, saying it doesn't matter. Inspired by the stars, Arya names her Stella, a word that means beauty in her homeland. Surprisingly, Stella loves it and adopts the name. Later that night, Tama wakes up to Stella's voice in his head, relieved that she can finally talk to him directly. She claims she knows Tama can speak human language because she heard him when he killed her. Tama is baffled. How is she alive? Stella, offended, reminds him they've met twice in the labyrinth. That's when it hits him. Stella is the Earth Dragon. Stella recounts her story. She was born in the dungeon, never needing anyone to tell her she was a powerful, high-ranking creature. For years, she crushed weaker monsters thinking no one could ever match her, until Tama defeated her. Thanks to her ancient resurrection ability, she was reborn as a human in the same labyrinth, found the gear of a fallen warrior, and began searching for her conqueror. Tama, now wary, wonders if Stella wants revenge, but she surprises him, explaining she's not here to fight. She's in a state of submission to her victor. In fact, she's never felt this way before, falling for someone strong enough to defeat her. Stella then lunges at Tama, clearly hoping for a closer connection, but Arya intercepts, grabbing Tama and protecting him. Stella, flustered, retreats, but not before telepathically telling Tama she loves him and will wait for him. Tama looks at Stella as she disappears into the night, thinking to himself, she might look human, but she's all dragon inside. He realizes they've brought a real monster into their home, and things are about to get a lot more complicated. That's all for this episode. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you.
The next morning, Stella woke up ravenous, tearing through breakfast like a black hole, asking about every bite before devouring it. While she ate, the dragoness communicated with Tama through telepathy, her curiosity piqued by Arya. There was something fascinating about this delicate-looking elf commanding a powerful creature like Tama. Tama explained that Arya was his savior and master, the one he'd sworn to serve. He also begged the dragoness not to reveal his true identity as a behemoth to Arya, fearing it would ruin everything. Amused by his secret, the dragoness briefly considered blackmailing him into becoming her mate, but decided against it. Winning him over fair and square sounded much more satisfying. After breakfast, Arya took Stella on a walk to jog her memory. Arya gently asked if Stella remembered anything about her past. "Yeah," Stella replied, "mostly fighting." Arya guessed Stella might have been an adventurer and wondered if meeting an elf stirred any old memories. Stella admitted she was surprised, especially by the idea of Arya keeping Tama as a pet. Overhearing the conversation, Tama realized that Stella likely thought Arya was even stronger than him, given their relationship. For someone like Stella, strength was everything. To trigger more memories, Arya suggested training together. Stella enthusiastically agreed. At Vulcan's smithy, Stella browsed for gear. Arya recommended sturdy armor, but Stella hated how restrictive it felt. Instead, she settled on gloves but flexed her draconic arms and tail with pride. It was then revealed that Stella was a draconid, a rare human-dragon hybrid. Vulcan couldn't resist inspecting Stella's tail, stroking it like a prized artifact. Stella snapped at her to stop, nervous about what the blacksmith might do with high-quality materials. Next, Stella went weapon shopping, digging through piles like a kid in a candy store. She surprised everyone by picking a massive iron shield. Holding it effortlessly in one hand, she left Jaws on the floor. "A shield?" the others murmured, expecting her to go for a flashy weapon. Stella explained telepathically that she'd ignored defense in her past life until Tama killed her. That lesson had taught her the value of defense and, oddly, love. With her shield secured, Stella grabbed an oversized sword. Tama sighed, already anticipating the chaos to come. Gear ready, the group entered the dungeon. Stella buzzed with excitement, but Arya, ever cautious, asked Tama to keep an eye on their fiery companion. Vulcan suggested starting with weak monsters, but Stella bolted ahead, hungry for action. She encountered 3 goblins and leapt into battle before anyone could stop her. Tossing her weapons into the air, she transformed into her draconic form, tearing through 2 goblins with her claws. Then, catching her falling sword, she obliterated the third with a single strike. Laughing and covered in blood, Stella exclaimed, "This is so much fun!" Tama sighed, unfazed. "She's an earth dragon. What did I expect?" Still, he hoped she'd stay on the right path. Arya observed Stella's fluid combat style, noting how instinctive it seemed. Her instincts might hold the key to her past, she said. Tama agreed, but knew Stella needed guidance to balance her dragon side with her human nature. Eager for a tougher challenge, Stella urged the group to press deeper into the dungeon. On the second floor, she fought 2 orcs, easily bashing them into submission with her shield. "This is way too easy for her," Arya muttered, and they moved on to the 3rd floor. Here, danger escalated. Before Arya could warn her, Stella charged ahead and faced a slimy roper. Disgusted, she ignored Tama's caution about its nasty tricks. When the creature grabbed her sword with its tentacles and sprayed her with slime, Stella snapped, unleashing her rage. Tama intervened, using his own tentacles to restrain the roper and obliterating it with a water-powered attack. Afterward, Tama asked why Stella had freaked out over such a weak monster. She admitted that ever since Tama had killed her, her mind hadn't been the same. Feeling guilty, Tama reassured her, "Don't worry, I've got your back. Just try to rely on your human side more than your dragon instincts." His words struck a chord, deepening Stella's growing affection for the elemental cat. Vulcan, ever cheerful, declared, "We're a perfect team." Stella, intrigued by the idea of teamwork, began to understand the strength of humans working together. Meanwhile, Arya, who had been caught in Tama's earlier tentacle attack, seemed unusually interested in experiencing it again, leaving Tama blushing furiously. Despite the chaos, the group pressed on, growing closer with each battle. Stella was slowly finding her place, and Tama silently prayed for fewer weird moments in the days ahead. Vulcan decided it was time to drill some discipline into Stella, starting with basic military tactics. She explained that with the right equipment, Stella would serve as the team's tank, the frontline defender. Her role? Absorb enemy attacks, shield her allies, and strike back with calculated power. Stella beamed with excitement at the idea of being the center of attention, eagerly nodding along. Tama silently approved of the plan. With Stella as their tank, the rest of the group could focus on offense, and he'd have the freedom to maneuver. That said, he couldn't help but hope Stella's wild spirit wouldn't completely derail their strategy. That hope was tested almost immediately. In the labyrinth, they spotted a group of orcs. Before anyone could outline a plan, Stella banged her shield with her sword, taunting the orcs like a carnival barker. One charged at her, axe raised high, only to have it shattered by her shield. With a gleeful laugh, Stella swung her sword, severing the orc's arm. The poor creature fled, howling in pain. But Stella wasn't content with her victory. Instead of holding the line, she charged after the retreating orc, completely ignoring the rest of the enemies. Tama sighed, muttering something about rookie enthusiasm, before casting Lion King's blessing to buff the team. Arya, ever composed, reminded him to use his tentacles, leaving Tama looking as flustered as a cat in a rainstorm. While Stella chased her quarry, Arya and Vulcan efficiently handled the remaining orcs, their teamwork flawless. Not long after, they encountered a giant roper. This time, Stella stayed in formation, using her shield to block its attacks while Arya and Tama dealt the finishing blows. By the end of the battle, Stella admitted that fighting as a team wasn't so bad after all. Later, the group stumbled upon a cave with a natural pool. Without hesitation, Stella stripped down and cannonballed into the water. Vulcan and Arya followed her lead, laughing as they joined in. Meanwhile, Tama stood awkwardly at the edge, resolutely maintaining his noble knight demeanor, despite the chaos around him. After their adventure, they returned to the guild to register Stella as an official adventurer. There, the receptionist, Anna, introduced them to a man named Reese. He had a special request for Arya, a multi-day escort mission to protect valuable goods. Tama puffed out his chest with pride. Someone needed his master personally. Riss explained that the job involved guarding something priceless. When Vulcan was invited to join, she hesitated, concerned about leaving her shop unattended, but ultimately promised to manage her schedule to come along. Curious, Stella asked what they'd be guarding. Reese led them to a warehouse and opened the doors. Inside, Stella froze in place. There, towering before her, was the skeleton of an earth dragon, her own body from her past life. Speechless, she stared at the remnants of her former self, emotions swirling as memories from her past began to surface. That's it for this episode. Thanks for watching my recap.
Reese explained that the merchant he bought it from believed the bones once belonged to a mighty beast that rebelled against its enemy, which had convinced him to make the purchase. But for Stella, it wasn't just a story. It was her own tragic history staring back at her. Seeing her frozen in place, Tama reached out through telepathy, his concern evident. "Are you okay?" Stella hesitated before admitting, "The moment I saw these bones, my death flashed before my eyes." She clenched her fists, trying to steady herself. If she was being completely honest, though, it wasn't just the painful memory that rattled her. A part of her was simply overwhelmed by admiration for Tama. His support, his presence, everything about him. Before the conversation could go any deeper, Anna arrived, and before Arya could depart, she handed over a new alpha promotion tag. With this, Arya was now ranked at B. With their affairs settled, the group set off on their escort mission, waving goodbye to Anna and Vulcan. The road was far from peaceful. Monsters lurked at every turn, but nothing slowed them down. Arya, Stella, and Tama worked seamlessly, each handling their role with precision. As night fell, they set up camp. Rhys, with a nostalgic smile, handed Arya a bouquet of lily of the valley. Curious, Stella tilted her head. "Are these edible?" Rhys chuckled. "No. My wife, Elisa, adored these flowers, so I used to pick them for her all the time." Hearing this, Tama finally understood why the merchant never ogled his master. Some men actually had self-control. Meanwhile, Arya questioned what Rhys planned to do with the Earth Dragon's skeleton. The merchant let out a long sigh. "That's a damn good question." He then mentioned a nearby arms dealer who had been hoarding rare materials, claiming a great war was on the horizon. This struck a chord with Tama, who recalled when Astaroth mentioned a powerful creature had been revived. A storm was brewing, one that could reshape the world. As their discussion continued, Rhys announced that by tomorrow they would reach Gladstone. "Let's get some rest while we can," he advised. But in the dead of night, something unnatural stirred in the distance. Tama bolted upright in his tent, his senses on high alert. An eerie force spread across the landscape, yet strangely, their camp remained untouched. Arya, woken by the disturbance, stepped out cautiously. "What the hell's going on?" Rhys, oddly calm, reassured her. "The cargo is safe." As it turned out, a brand new labyrinth was forming nearby. Most people didn't know this, but dungeons could spontaneously emerge in the middle of nowhere. With that mystery settled, the group pressed on, pushing through the thick fog left in the labyrinth's wake. Thinking they had made it through safely, Arya sighed in relief. "Still, I'd love to go back and explore it someday." Tama, ever the opportunist, smirked. "Fresh labyrinths are gold mines for rare materials." Hearing this, Rhys made an offer. "If you're interested in diving in, I'll buy any valuable finds you uncover." Arya and Stella's eyes gleamed with excitement, but Rhys warned them to stay sharp. No one knew what lay inside a dungeon that hadn't existed mere hours ago. As they neared the entrance, Tama activated the Divine Lion's protection, shielding the team. Stella, feeling practically invincible with the buff, charged ahead like an eager berserker. Arya barely had time to shout, "Slow down, you reckless dragon!" Seeing no other way to rein her in, the elf recalled something Vulcan had written for moments like this. "Stella, if you fight by my side, I'll let you hug Tama once." At that, the reincarnated Earth Dragon screeched to a halt. She whipped around, eyes wide with determination, and obediently rejoined her allies, all for a chance to snuggle her favorite cat. Just then, a feminine laugh echoed through the dungeon, and a magical sphere appeared, inviting them to seek treasure. Stella, as always, acted first and thought later. She bolted after the orb. Unfortunately, it was leading them straight into an ambush. Two colossal monkeys lunged at them. Without missing a beat, Stella stepped up as the tank drawing their attention. One of the creatures slammed its head against her shield, dazed from the impact. Arya seized the opening, striking with precision. One blow, then another. Within moments, both beasts collapsed. Arya applauded her team's flawless coordination, but sighed. "I'd love to say I'm just happy we worked together, but honestly, I just didn't want Tama to get hurt." Before she could dwell on that thought, a nearby bush rustled suspiciously. A soft, innocent voice tried, and failed, to play dumb. One tiny and fluttering, the other much larger and rooted. The smaller one introduced herself as Lily, a high fairy, while the larger one, Fairy, was a high dryad. Stella, ever curious or just plain hungry, asked, "What do you taste like?" Arya quickly clarified that fairies were not food, not that she had ever seen one in real life before. Before Stella could push the subject further, the duo fixated on Tama, scooping him up for a cuddle session. Stella lunged at them. "You pests just tried to kill us with that trap, and now you think you can touch him?" Tama, using telepathy, urged her to calm down. Lily, deeply offended, huffed. "We weren't trying to kill you. We just wanted to befriend the adorable elemental cat." Barry, in an attempt to change the subject, revealed a hidden treasure chest within the labyrinth. Inside, they found a flask of what looked like an incredibly rare potion. Lily and Fairy mentioned that more treasures like this existed deeper inside. However, to reach them, the adventurers needed a key currently being guarded by a swarm of giant, vicious bees. As if on cue, the insects attacked. Stella raised her shield, Tama unleashed his aether howl, and Arya struck with her whirlwind cut. In mere moments, the battlefield was silent once more. Once the battle was over, Fairy snatched Tama up again, fawning over how someone so small and cute could be this powerful. Lily praised Stella and Arya, to which Stella smugly declared, "I just get things done." Meanwhile, Arya retrieved the key from the tree, and Lily explained that it would open the dungeon boss's door, the guardian of the main treasure. As dawn broke, they entered the city, the fairies utterly enchanted by human civilization. At Reese's shop, the merchant's eyes widened when he saw the rare potion. This is the tear of truth. Anyone who drinks it cannot lie. He mused about the effort it must have taken to retrieve such a relic. Before Arya could explain, the fairies burst into the room like mischievous children. Seeing them, Reese looked unexpectedly emotional. He stared for a long moment, then excused himself, saying he had something to handle. Later that night, Stella finally claimed her long-awaited reward, a hug from Tama. She hesitated. After all this time, she wasn't sure how to handle this victory. Slowly, she patted the little feline. Then, in a moment of sheer instinct, buried her face into his soft belly and took a deep, dramatic sniff. Smells like victory. Meanwhile, back in the ruins, Vulcan finished her work, only to be greeted by a skeleton clawing its way out of the ground. With a flicker of effort, she crushed it with her hammer, but as the bones scattered, a strange purple energy pulsed around them. Something was coming. The escort team reaches the boss's door. With a turn of the key, the portal glows, and they step through, leaving the fairies behind. The tiny creatures cheer them on like an excited crowd at a grand tournament. On the other side, danger strikes immediately. A rank B-intent dragon roars and unleashes a barrage of magical blasts. Stella plants her feet, raising her shield just in time. The force rattles her, but she only grins, charging forward and slamming her shield into the dragon's snout to grab its attention. Then, as if to prove her words, she lunges forward, gripping the dragon's forearm and locking it in place. The perfect opening. Tama acts fast. Flames surge around him as he activates Flame Howl, his tentacles wrapping around the beast and binding it tight. Arya, now. With a sharp gleam in her eyes, Arya dashes forward. Her blade flashes as she slices through the dragon's throat in one swift, decisive strike. The beast lets out a final, gurgling roar before collapsing with a heavy thud. Their reward appears before them, a treasure chest containing 2 ancient scrolls. The moment Arya touches one, a rush of energy flows through her. Her sword glows with golden runes. She has awakened the sacred blade. Feeling stronger than ever, the team heads back to the labyrinth forest to find the fairies, but when they arrive, an eerie silence greets them. Tama's chest tightens as he spots something on the ground. A wooden bowl, tipped over, his contents spilled. Something is wrong. Meanwhile, in the city, Reese sits in his dimly lit office, absent-mindedly ringing a small bell. His eyes drift to a portrait of his wife, Eliza, a knowing smile playing on his lips.
Stella and Arya drag themselves back to the city, exhausted, and spill everything to Vulcan. The blacksmith listens and casually suggests checking the tavern, because, let's be honest, that's where all the juicy info usually is. Before they can head out, a butler waltzes into the shop with 2 hooded guys, announcing that Count Gladstone is looking for Arya. He makes no effort to hide how he's ogling the women, even commenting on Stella and Vulcan's looks, saying the Count would love to see them. Stella has no clue what this creep is on about, but immediately shuts him down. Arya politely says they're busy and might visit the Count someday, whoever he is. But the butler isn't having it. Apparently, refusing the Count is a crime. That gets Vulcan's attention. This is serious. She sighs and says they'll go. Once the butler steps outside, Stella groans, wondering why they're wasting time with some rich weirdo when they need to find the fairies. Vulcan, however, mentions she's heard some things about this Count. None of them good. During the carriage ride, Vulcan drops a bomb. This guy is known for kidnapping women. Yep, full-on creep mode. Stella immediately asks if he could have taken Lily and Fairy. Vulcan nods. That's exactly why they're going. They arrive at the mansion at dusk. The butler knocks and the Count welcomes them inside. First thing out of his mouth, "I've never seen women this beautiful before." Vulcan and Arya play nice, thanking him for the hospitality. Then, out of nowhere, the Count snaps his fingers like he just had the best idea ever. "You should all be my concubines," he announces proudly. No one has ever regretted it. Tama takes one look at him and mentally confirms that yes, this man is just as disgusting as the rumors said. The butler then brings out tea and hands each of them a cup. The Count, clearly way too eager, watches as they pick them up, practically drooling as Arya lifts hers to her lips. But before anyone drinks, Tama discreetly casts a blessing to make sure they don't get poisoned. Turns out the tea is amazing, so good that they ask for more, which leaves the Count extremely confused. He pulls his butler aside and hisses, "Why aren't they passing out?" The butler, now sweating, promises to make a stronger batch. Before he can, Sella slams the table, grabs the Count by his fancy shirt, and demands to know where Lily and Ferry are. The Count, now terrified, swears he has no clue. Tama tells her telepathically to calm down, so she reluctantly lets go. Arya tries to smooth things over with an apology, but the Count has already made up his mind. They must be possessed by demons, and obviously the only way to fix this is by purifying them, aka locking them up. The butler claps his hands, and suddenly hooded guards surround them, weapons drawn. Stella sighs, realizing they've somehow gotten themselves into another mess. She's ready to throw hands, but Tama tells her telepathically to wait. Arya and Vulcan try to talk things down, saying they're not here to start a fight. Before anything happens, a soldier bursts in, shouting that an undead army is attacking the city. Skeletons are everywhere, people are panicking, and the horde is heading straight for the mansion. The Count? He immediately tries to flee. His butler suggests hiding upstairs, and the Count, loving that idea, orders his men to die for him while he runs up the stairs. The butler asks what to do with the guests, and the Count waves him off. He couldn't care less. With that, the mansion's staff abandons ship, leaving the girls alone. Arya, worried about the townspeople, says they have to help. The others agree. Outside, it's absolute chaos. Skeletons are everywhere, people are running for their lives, and it's up to them to fight back. Arya and Vulcan start guiding people to safety, while Arya and her elemental cat prepare to throw down. Seeing the endless waves of skeletons, Stella sighs, saying there's no way they can take them all down. They need to find whoever's controlling them. Arya agrees and suggests splitting up. Vulcan will stay behind to protect the townspeople and the little girl, while Arya, Stella, and Tama go after the mastermind. Meanwhile, the Count is hiding on a rooftop with his butler and a soldier, watching everything unfold. As the heroes move through the city, they hear a bell ringing from Count Gladstone's mansion. They follow the sound and come face to face with the culprit, Rhys. He doesn't hold back, explaining that he's only after revenge because Count Gladstone killed his fiancée, Elisa. Fueled by rage, Rhys summons even more skeletons. Tama immediately realizes, this guy is definitely a necromancer. Rhys admits that on his own he can barely summon 2 skeletons, but with help? That's a different story. He dramatically pulls back his robe, revealing Lily and Ferry, the 2 fairies. Trapped and drained of their magic, the group is furious. Kima guesses that Rhys is controlling the fairies with the bell, and that the arrow he's holding is also part of his plan. Turns out, he's using the arrow to steal their mana, summoning an undead army to fuel his revenge. Fairies have insane amounts of magic, and thanks to them, Rhys unleashes a massive explosion, completely leveling his own house. From the rubble, a giant earth dragon skeleton emerges. The monster he's been after this whole time. Smirking, Rhys sarcastically thanks the heroes, since without them, none of this would have been possible. Then, he steps into the dragon's chest, merging with it like he's the creature's heart. Seeing this, Stella is beyond pissed. She charges straight through the skeleton horde, smashing enemies left and right, but before she can reach Rhys, the dragon swats her away with a single hit. Tama jumps in, using his Aether Howl to shatter the dragon's tail, but the bones just reassemble instantly. The thing can regenerate. Now it's Arya's turn. She activates her new skill, Holy Blade. striking the dragon with divine energy. It works, finally damaging the beast. But there's a problem. Holy Blade drains a ton of mana, and Arya can't use it again anytime soon. Tama realizes this fight just got a lot harder. He can't evolve into his Behemoth form right now, so he warns Stella that they need to stall for time and rescue Lily and Fairy first. Without hesitating, Stella slams into the skeletons with her shield, clearing a path toward the dragon. Tama soars through the air, following her lead. Back in the city, people are desperately defending themselves, setting up barricades. Just when things look bad, Vulcan shows up. She's not about to let these people die. The little girl she was protecting runs to her mother, and Vulcan drags her hammer across the ground, creating a massive fire barrier to block the skeletons. Meanwhile, Tama unleashes Flame Howl, hitting the dragon hard. But Stella gets crushed under its paw. Gritting her teeth, she refuses to lose to a mere pile of bones. Using all her strength, she pushes the paw up with her shield as a brace. Seeing his chance, Tama summons his tentacles, snatching Lily and Fairy out of Rhys's grasp. Now, Arya can go for the kill. With her path cleared, Stella powers up her legs with integral traction, breaks free and slices off the dragon's entire left arm. Tama follows up with Flame Edge, cutting deep into the beast. Then Arya finishes it. With a final strike from Holy Blade, the dragon disintegrates. Rhys crashes to the ground, staring in disbelief, his dream of revenge gone just like that. Arya approaches and tells him that this isn't who he really is. Elisa wouldn't have wanted this. But Rhys isn't done. He refuses to forgive Count Gladstone. Clutching his bell, he rings it one last time, ordering his skeletons to rise for victory. Only one moves. The lone skeleton steps forward, reaching for Rhys's hand. Suddenly, its form shifts. It's Elisa. Or at least, the illusion of her. Around them, the battlefield fades, replaced by a peaceful, beautiful field. Rhys falls silent, staring at the vision of the woman he lost. Elisa smiles gently and tells Rhys that he never thinks straight when he's upset. Tears start falling from his eyes as he breaks down, begging for her forgiveness. He finally admits that everything was his fault. She nods and tells him that he must atone for his actions. It won't be easy, but she believes he can overcome it. With that, Elisa fades away forever, taking the bell and the entire skeleton army with her. Meanwhile, back in the city, Vulcan and the others watch in shock as the undead suddenly vanish. Count Gladstone, who had been trembling in fear as the monsters climbed his roof, lets out a huge sigh of relief. The next day, a massive crowd gathers in the public square for an execution. Inside a tent nearby, Gladstone's butler whispers that this is the perfect chance for his master to show his authority. Arya enters, carrying a jug of tea. She pours Gladstone a cup and he takes a sip, savoring the expensive taste. Tama casually remarks that the tea was indeed costly. Soon after, the Count confidently steps onto the execution platform, where Rhys Greybone is positioned for his final moments. Before the execution begins, Gladstone proudly announces the arrival of the city's true heroes, Arya, Stella, and Vulcan. He then turns to Rhys and demands to know why he caused such a disaster. Rhys answers without hesitation. He wanted revenge for his wife's death. Hearing this, Gladstone smirks and openly admits that he was the one who killed Elisa. However, he claims that confessing earlier would have ruined his plans. The crowd gasps in shock. As soon as the words leave his mouth, Gladstone realizes he has exposed himself. Arya steps forward, holding a small bottle, and casually asks if he also knows anything about the missing women in the city. Still dazed, Gladstone blurts out the whole truth. He personally ordered the elimination of every single one of them. The crowd erupts in fury. As the realization sinks in, panic takes over Gladstone. He demands to know what is happening, but Arya smirks and explains that she had mixed a potion called Truth Drop into his tea. The people completely lose control. The missing women weren't just strangers, they were their mothers, daughters, and sisters. Blinded by rage, the crowd storms the platform, ready to tear their corrupt Count apart with their own hands. Meanwhile, Rhys turns to Arya and the others, offering a weak but grateful smile. He thanks them for everything. Days later, after a full public confession, Gladstone is stripped of his title and sentenced to life in prison. Reese, however, is spared from execution and instead given a normal prison sentence. The next day, the group traveled by carriage when Stella, feeling jealous, asked if the fairies should return to the forest. Riding on Tama, Lily firmly replied that she wanted to stay with him. Meanwhile, Fairy expressed her gratitude for being rescued. As they gazed out the carriage window, both were captivated by the breathtaking sea view. Valken was excited as they neared Ruin, while Arya reminded her pet that they were returning to the place where they first met. Upon arriving at the guild, Anna welcomed them with an enthusiastic bear hug, pulling all the newcomers into her embrace. She was eager to hear about their adventures in Gladstone. Not just Anna, but the entire guild acknowledged Arya's incredible feat, defeating a high-ranking undead dragon, which earned her a legendary reputation. To honor her achievement, Anna presented Arya with a silver adventurer's tag, marking her promotion to rank A. Stella was also promoted to rank B. Arya was thrilled but couldn't help asking if Valken had been promoted as well. Anna recalled, with a slightly awkward smile, that Valken had actually refused a higher rank because she loved her current position too much. Valken confirmed, explaining that life as a blacksmith suited her better. A grand celebration erupted in Ruin for the returning heroes. During the festivities, the receptionist mentioned that a special gift had arrived from Gladstone, a 10-year supply of canned fruit. The girls were amazed, but Tama immediately dreaded the chaos of storing all those barrels. Arya suggested that Vulcan keep them at her place, but the blacksmith protested, saying her storage was already packed with materials and tools. Anna then suggested that Arya should get a place of her own. With the reward from their last mission, she could afford a nice home. Taking a sip from her mug, Arya agreed, saying it was time for a proper home where all their friends could live together. Curious, she asked Tama for his opinion. Though silent, the cat clearly approved, just like the rest of the group. The next day, they visited a real estate agency called Lupro Certo in the commercial district. The agent asked what they wanted in their new home. Stella simply wanted a good kitchen for cooking meat, so he noted that down. Lily and Fairy requested lots of grass and trees, so he added a large garden. Arya wanted a spacious room, while Tama quietly worried about the cost. The agent, however, assured them that he had the perfect house, at a great price. He led them to a beautiful mansion secluded from the busy city. Each woman was delighted. Stella loved the kitchen, the fairies adored the garden, and Arya was happy with the spacious rooms. However, the agent hesitated before revealing why the house had not been sold yet. It had no regular bath, only an oversized outdoor hot spring. To his surprise, the group absolutely loved it, and Arya immediately closed the deal. By late afternoon, they had moved all their belongings into their new home. Lily and Fairy excitedly bounced on the soft beds, while Valken proudly declared that she finally got what she wanted. Tama observed Stella effortlessly carrying the heaviest furniture as if they weighed nothing. Ironically, her reward for all that effort was getting to pet him, something she eagerly took advantage of, treating him like a plaything. Arya found the scene bizarre, noticing that Tama and Stella seemed to be communicating without words. Meanwhile, the next morning, Valken arrived with 2 buckets full of lobsters, making everyone's mouths water, especially Stella's. She curiously asked what kind of creature they were, since they looked tough to eat. Valken explained that they were a famous delicacy from Obal, a favorite among the city's residents. That evening, the group enjoyed a massive feast. Stella indulged in meat, as she had promised, while everyone else ate to their heart's content. Later that night, Valken and Arya slept comfortably, with Tama nestled between them as usual. As always, Tama had strange dreams, this time about his elemental abilities. Though he wanted to rest, he had much to think about. He had unlocked a new power, elemental explosion, and more importantly, gained access to a 3rd transformation. This worried him. The last time he evolved, he had feared never returning to his original form. Lost in thought, he was startled when Stella appeared on the balcony. She had woken up upon hearing him mutter to himself. Though he told her to go back to sleep, she refused, insisting on knowing what was bothering him. With no way to escape, Tama admitted that he had unlocked a transformation even stronger than before. Hearing this, Stella went wild with excitement, demanding to see it. Nearly climbing the walls in anticipation, she chased after Tama, begging him to fight her in her dragon form. The next morning, as everyone enjoyed breakfast, Stella was still pestering Tama about his new transformation through telepathic messages. Meanwhile, Lily and Fairy were excited about adding more plants to the garden. Arya, understanding their love for nature, planned to hire a gardener, but the fairies insisted on handling it themselves. Tama, observing them, was surprised. He had never realized that dryads and fairies had such powerful abilities. Not long after, fairies started drumming and chanting, calling upon the power of spring. Almost instantly, a tree began to grow in the backyard. But before it could fully sprout, Vulcan rushed outside in a panic. It wasn't just any tree. It was a world tree, a legendary plant with rare minerals hidden within its roots. Worried that such a discovery could bring trouble, Vulcan quickly told Fairy to surround it with regular trees to keep it hidden from prying eyes. As if that wasn't surprising enough, the Dryad also created a life spring, a magical water source known to heal any illness or wound. While Vulcan worried about the trouble this could cause if discovered, Lily was more focused on how great it would be for their skin. With a sigh, Vulcan decided to let it go for now, but kept her concerns in mind. Later inside, Vulcan and Arya warned Lily and Fairy that fairies with such powerful abilities could be targeted and kidnapped. The fairies were shaken, but Tama was more curious about how Vulcan knew so much about it. The blacksmith explained that the world tree's roots might contain orichalcum, an extremely rare metal. However, only artifact blacksmiths, highly skilled craftsmen recognized by the government, could work with it. Tama doubted Vulcan was on that level, considering how she always turned down rank promotions and seemed uninterested in fame. Just then, Anna burst into the house, apologizing for the sudden visit but bringing urgent news. A powerful monster had appeared on the first floor of Ruin's dungeon, and several adventurers had already lost their lives trying to fight it. The group immediately agreed to investigate. The fairies also wanted to come, but they hesitated, worried they might be a burden. Seeing their uncertainty, Tama let out a determined meow and stood tall, reassuring them that he would protect everyone. Arya, sensing his intentions, smiled and invited the fairies to join them. At the dungeon entrance, they encountered a weak goblin and a slightly stronger hobgoblin, enemies that were common on the first floor. Lily wasted no time, launching herself like a bullet and piercing the goblin's head. Next, Fairy used a branch whip to strike the hobgoblin hard, finishing it off. Their performance impressed the others, and Tama noted that the fairies could be valuable for mid-range combat. However, before they could celebrate, a loud roar echoed from deeper within the dungeon. Vulcan guessed it was a minotaur, but Arya found it strange for such a strong monster to be on the first floor. Stella, however, thought the roar sounded more like one of fear. As they advanced unseen, they discovered what had caused the cry of terror. Deep inside the dungeon, an A-rank troll was devouring defeated monsters, including the minotaur they had suspected was lurking ahead. The team quickly planned their attack. Arya told Tama to stay back, wanting to test how much stronger she had become. Lily and Fairy set up an ambush, with Lily launching herself at the troll's eye. Unfortunately, her attack failed to pierce its tough skin. Fairy's branch whip managed to wound it, but the injury healed instantly, and the creature turned its attention to them. The troll swung its massive club, but Stella rushed in, using her shield to block the attack. Vulcan struck the monster's foot with her hammer, causing it to roar in pain. Arya, using her speed, darted forward and landed several quick slashes. Stella then gave Lily a new target, the troll's eye. Hoping to break its defense, the fairy followed the command, and as the monster flinched, Stella lunged, stabbing it in the chest. Despite the heavy injury, the troll refused to fall. Seeing the moment to finish it, Vulcan called on Arya. The elf charged with her holy blade, unleashing a triple strike that finally brought the beast down. After the battle, Stella, who usually preferred to fight alone, admitted that working as a team was actually enjoyable. With the mission complete, Arya suggested they return to the guild and report their findings to Anna. Meanwhile, far away in the royal capital, a scout rushed into the throne room, bringing dire news to the king. Monsters across the land were growing restless, almost as if they were being controlled by demons. Time was running out. At the same time, in another part of the capital, Alicia turned to a soldier and whispered, "It's time." Next day, at the guild hall, Anna informs the group that they have just received a summons from none other than the Emperor himself. The elf, Arya, doesn't understand why, but Anna believes that the Emperor wants to thank them for saving Gladstone. Arian isn't so sure about that, so Anna asks Vulcan for her opinion. Though uncertain, she says that maybe that is the case. Right now, the girls have already set out on their journey. During the night, they set up camp, and the next day their journey continues. The road is quite long, but Lily finally spots the Imperial City in the distance. Upon arriving at the entrance, some guards confirm Arya's identity and inform her that they have come for her on behalf of the Emperor. Along the way, the girls are amazed by the number of people and the grand structures, clearly indicating that the Imperial City is the true heart of the nation. They also see beautifully presented and seemingly delicious food, but the only one who doesn't look happy is Vulcan. Finally, they arrive at the castle, and the Emperor immediately welcomes them, stating that their recent defense of Gladstone deserves great praise. Everyone says it is an honor to accept his gratitude, but Vulcan remarks that it has been a long time since they last met. Arya is surprised by this, and the royal prince Julius also comments that it has been a long time since he last saw the legendary artifact smith. This is a title that Vulcan had never mentioned to her companions. The Blue Hood Man explains that during the Ragnarok War, the Grand Mages group saved everyone, and among them was a tigress-eared warrior wielding a hammer, obviously referring to Vulcan. He believes that under different circumstances, she would have served this nation as an artifact forger. However, she explains that as a token of appreciation for her services, she was allowed to run her own small independent business. Arya simply can't believe that one of her companions is such an important person. Suddenly, a woman named Beelzebub appears out of nowhere, angering the prince as he detests these sudden appearances. Vulcan explains that Beelzebub is the holy demon who aids humanity. Arya wonders what in the world she has gotten herself into, as this seems far beyond her reach. Beelzebub tells her that soon it really will be. Arya then asks if she just read her mind, which is obviously the case. Upon hearing this, the prince once again gets angry at Beelzebub, as she is supposed to ask for permission before reading someone's mind. However, she seems to care very little about the rules and wants to get straight to the point. She states that they need strength to face the imminent return of the four demons. This is shocking, as their objective is fourfold: to break the seal of the living calamity, also known as the seventh demon king, named Maimon. They want to do this in order to use his power to then revive none other than the god of darkness. The protagonist inevitably recalls Beryl's words, as he clearly stated that humanity was doomed to fall sooner or later. He is obviously terrified, now understanding what Beryl meant. Julius clarifies that this is why Arya and her group were summoned, as he wants to know if they will fight alongside them against the four demons. The elf didn't expect something like this. Tama notices that her heart is beating much faster than usual, so she approaches to calm her down and give her support. With great honor, Arya decides to fight alongside them against such fearsome enemies. Now, Julius asks Vulcan to forge artifacts for everyone, and she has no problem agreeing. Lily asks what those artifacts are, and Beelzebub explains that they are special weapons crafted from rare materials by a very special blacksmith. Well, I think it's pretty clear that this is something extremely special. Estella gets excited upon hearing this, and the prince assures Vulcan that she will have all the funding necessary to carry out her work in the best possible way. In fact, here we can see those who will be assisting her. Meanwhile, the rest of the group, according to Julius, will undergo training to acquire new abilities. To start, he himself will train Estella to become an excellent tank. She, eager to face a strong opponent, agrees without hesitation. Beelzebub will train the two fairies, and as for Ara, the prince informs her that he has someone special to train her. However, they will wait to see if that person accepts or not. While they are in this luxurious estate admiring a painting, none other than Alicia appears, wearing the maid uniform. She surprisingly recognizes Arya, saying she could never forget such determined eyes. Arya, for her part, could never forget Alicia either, nor how she felt that time. Since then, Alicia has been the guiding light on her path. Arya can't hold back her tears, but Alicia calms her, happy to see how much she has grown in every way, having accomplished so many feats recently. Alicia also mentions that she has a very interesting friend. Arya tells her about Tama, an elemental cat who is part of her family. Alicia wonders if he's truly an elemental cat, but decides not to dwell on it for now. Now, the training begins. Alicia asks Arya to attack with all her strength, while she in turn will only use a wooden sword. Instantly, a crushing power fills the air, and Tama realizes that this is, without a doubt, the legendary Alicia, the Holy Sword Saint. Arya is so terrified that she could already see how she could get hurt. She feels so inferior that she has no choice but to go all out. Alicia dodges the attack but immediately declares that Arya has passed the test. Despite being overwhelmed by fear, she was able to be brave and take the step that many others cannot. From now on, she promises that they will grow stronger together. Meanwhile, Vulcan is working tirelessly with her assistants, even giving them tips on forging higher quality weapons with enchantments. Beelzebub has also begun training the two fairies, teaching them useful techniques to complement their companions' abilities. The prince is training Estella, who asks why he doesn't carry a shield. He explains that in the last war it was worn down due to his own recklessness, and now he lacks the energy to carry something so heavy. Regardless, Estella refuses to hold back and unleashes her dragon sides, launching an attack. However, Julius defeats her in just 2 moves. He acknowledges that she has incredible strength, even surpassing him, but warns that fighting like that will only lead to disaster. He clarifies that a tank must endure until the end and be ready to protect their group above all else. On Alicia's side, she decides that they have trained enough for today and will continue tomorrow. Just then, Vulcan appears and, to everyone's surprise, hugs Alicia. They've been friends for a long time, since the time Alicia met the Great Mage. It turns out she has a peculiar side, calling herself the wife and slave of her master, the Great Mage. She immediately drags Arya away to tell her some romantic stories about him. After a good bath, it's time for dinner, or rather, a feast. I don't know why, but Alicia is the one serving the food. She presents an interesting dish she learned from her master, a hamburger steak, a classic dish from the Great Mage's homeland, Japan. When Tama hears Japan, he wonders if the Great Mage is from another world. But come on, we already know that's obvious, though I definitely didn't expect it to be mentioned here. Later that night, everyone is asleep except for Tama, who can't fall asleep at all. Suddenly, he encounters Alicia. She is surprised to see him but comments that he actually looks like a normal cat. She then tells him to be sure to protect everyone when the time comes. Of course, she knows that Tama is a behemoth. The protagonist can't believe she knew from the start and still kept quiet about it. The next morning, everyone resumes their training. The fairies are motivated by the promise of sweets after practice. Vulcan continues working tirelessly. Estella keeps training but doesn't understand why the prince is so strong. He apologizes, saying it wasn't intentional. He also mentions that he just realized that, unlike Arya, Estella doesn't need a reason to become strong. She already is. He simply reminds her to always have determination. Arya has been training non-stop since morning, determined to become stronger. Tama doesn't understand where she gets the energy for this. Alicia knows that Arya has followed her example and has grown strong because of it. However, she reminds her that she will have to go even further to obtain new abilities. She asks Arya why she fights, because the answer will shape her path. Vulcan has completed her work. Estella has gained a new skill. The fairies have also acquired their own. However, Arya has not. She wants to keep training, but Beelzebub arrives with urgent news. They have discovered the whereabouts of the 4 demons. At the royal palace, they learn that each of the 4 demons has returned to a different location. Beelzebub explains that Cedric and the Imperial Army have already set off toward the 2 predicted locations. However, 2 other locations remain. The first is the Kingdom of Alphys, Alicia's homeland, so she will head there as soon as possible. The second is the Ruin Labyrinth. The girls are shocked because they had just bought their house there. Despite the bad news, Arya knows they must go and protect their home. The next day, a group of adventurers join the main team for a dungeon expedition. Howard explained that since Captain Cedric was busy fighting demons elsewhere, the rest of them would have to step up. 2 of the newcomers, Kenny and Marietta, greeted Arya warmly. It had been a while since they'd last seen the elf. As they ventured deeper into the dungeon, it didn't take long before they ran into a nasty mix of goblins and minotaurs. Despite how terrifying the creatures looked, Stella smirked. This was the perfect chance to test out her new gear, crafted by Vulcan using powerful artifacts. Arya was just as eager. She dashed forward, cutting down a huge chunk of the enemy horde in the blink of an eye, without even needing to boost her speed. Now it was Stella's turn. She faced off against a minotaur, which immediately smashed into her shield with full force. But her artifact, Calibalog, absorbed the impact completely. In response, her sword, Cleon Solaris, unleashed a magical beam that completely obliterated the beast. Tama observed closely. Stella's shield seemed to be absorbing energy and channeling it into her sword. Meanwhile, Fairy used her branch whip to trap 3 enemies, giving Lily the perfect shot to take them out with her fairy bullet. Tama noticed their magic seemed stronger than usual, proof that the artifacts were really making a difference. That's when Tama realized he hadn't done a thing in this fight. As Kenny clapped for the team's flawless performance, Julius credited their success to all the intense training they'd been through. Marietta, on the other hand, praised Vulcan for crafting such high-quality artifacts, making the blacksmith too flustered to respond. But before they could celebrate, Julius picked up on the sounds of battle coming from below. The team rushed to investigate and found the floor littered with monster corpses. From the dungeon's shadows, glowing red eyes emerged. A group of powerful mutant trolls loomed ominously. Julius was stunned. Creatures this strong shouldn't be this deep in the dungeon. Danny suggested they conserve their energy, especially Julius, since they'd be facing demons soon. Howard and Kenny agreed and took the lead in battle, so Julius wouldn't have to exhaust himself. The rest of the team pressed on, deeper into the dungeon. Eventually, they arrived at a massive gate split by a grotesque fissure, and an overwhelming, malevolent aura filled the air. Tama's body instinctively recoiled, every muscle screaming at him to run. But there was no turning back now. Julius ordered everyone to brace themselves. The elemental cat cast the Lion King's blessing to buff his allies, and they stepped into the room. At the far end, a voice echoed from a throne. Its owner sneered, sensing the holy energy of new heroes entering his domain. Julius immediately knew who they were facing, one of the 4 demonic. The creature introduced himself as Visago. He barely acknowledged Julius's declaration that he would be slain. Instead, he summoned a Cyclops and an Orthrus, monstrous creatures with an insatiable hunger for human flesh. The battle began. The Cyclops swung its massive club at Julius, but the prince dodged effortlessly. Meanwhile, Julius noticed Visago was trying to open a portal to escape. He immediately lunged forward, sword raised, forcing the demon to block his attack. Julius called out orders. He would handle Visago alone. Arya and Tama were to take down the Orthrus, while the rest worked together to bring down the Cyclops. Wasting no time, Arya activated her acceleration and went after the 2-headed beast. It retaliated with its Hellclaw, but the elf dodged skillfully. She summoned her Holy Blade to strike, but the Orthrus was quick enough to avoid the attack. Seeing an opening, Tama cast Water Howl, slashing a deep wound into the beast's side. The Orthrus roared in fury, glaring at the tiny cat that dared to wound it. On the other side of the battlefield, the Cyclops charged at Stella. She braced herself with her shield, and though the impact was massive, she reinforced her body with draconic power to hold her ground. Vulcan took advantage of the moment, striking the Cyclops' horn with his hammer. This gave Fairy just enough time to form the Yggdrasil shot, combining it with Lily's fairy ballad to deal massive damage. Everything seemed to be going well, except for Julius. He was struggling in his fight. Visago grinned, eager to watch the so-called hero of Ragnarok fall. He summoned a giant cursed snake that clashed against Julius's sword. Still, the prince held firm, determined to end the demon's ambitions. Meanwhile, Tama and Arya launched another round of attacks at the Orthrus, Tama with Aether Missile and Arya with her Holy Blade, but neither attack was enough to bring the beast down. Things got even worse when the Cyclops unleashed its Hell Spear, devastating the battlefield and forcing the team to retreat. Seeing the situation turning dire, Tama worried about Julius. If they didn't wrap this up fast, the prince might not last. And he was right. Julius was on the verge of losing. Satisfied with the damage he'd done, Visago decided it was time to leave. But before stepping through his portal, he cast the Demon King's blessing on the Cyclops and the Orthrus, making them even more powerful. Tama gulped. If these creatures were nearly unbeatable before, what were they now? Worse, Julius, who was supposed to be their strongest fighter, was down. Despair settled over the group. The Orthrus seized the moment, summoning Hell Needle and striking Arya down. Seeing his master wounded, Tama knew he had no choice. He had to evolve. As his body began to glow, shifting and transforming, all eyes turned to him. This battle was far from over. Meanwhile, in the kingdom of Alphs, Alicia continued her journey through the local dungeon, cutting down any monster in her way. Eventually, she arrived at a massive gate, and the moment she stood before it, she sensed a familiar presence. Wasting no time, she sliced through the entrance like it was paper and stormed inside. The Holy Sword immediately reacted. It recognized one of the four demonic, Rive. Riv, the demonist, remembered being slain by Alicia before, but this time she was different. She had received power from King Mammon himself, granting her the ability to take on a dragon form. She was certain this fight would end in her victory, but Alicia had no time for games. Before Riv could even transform, the elf moved at blinding speed and severed her head in an instant. Just like the demon, the Holy Sword had also received a blessing from its master. With the battle won, Alicia figured that if things stayed this easy, Cedric wouldn't have much trouble. But her real concern was Arya and the others. As long as they had Tama, though, she believed they'd be fine. Back in the dungeon, Tama stood tall, his overwhelming presence making the enemy tremble in fear. Julius was shocked to see such a majestic beast, its golden eyes shining with power. Arya, however, was in disbelief. Was this really Tama? The Behemoth himself was nervous about how his master would react to his transformation. But the real surprise? People mistook him for a so-called sacred beast. Orthros and the Cyclops quickly realized they couldn't take on this new threat alone. The Cyclops, seeing no other option, begged for forgiveness from Visago before impaling itself with the Spear of Sacrifice, transferring its power to the Infernal Hound. Orthros followed suit, tearing off one of its own heads, unleashing a wave of hellfire across the battlefield. Tama countered immediately with his flame howl, and the two forces clashed, shaking the entire dungeon. Vulcan quickly analyzed the situation. Orthros's final attack was impossible to dodge. It would hit no matter what. As the Cyclops launched the Spear of Sacrifice toward Tama, Stella stepped forward, determined to protect him from both attacks. Vulcan warned her that not even an artifact could fully block this, but she was ready to take the risk. If Tama fell, they all would. Her courage reminded Julius of why she was one of the strongest among them, her unwavering resolve to protect others. With that in mind, Stella reinforced herself to the absolute limit. She thanked Vulcan for the artifact he had crafted and placed her trust in Fairy and Lily, hoping that one day they'd be able to take care of themselves. She turned to Arya and asked her to watch over Tama. Then, as the deadly spear came flying toward her, she shouted to Tama, telling him that he had the power to defeat any demon, even their king. The rest would be up to him. Stella had once lived alone in the depths of the labyrinth, only to die by Tama's hands. Yet fate had given her a second chance, allowing her to live as a human-dragon hybrid alongside her newfound friends. In the end, she had a fulfilling life. But as the Spear of Sacrifice struck Calibald, her shield, it became clear that it wouldn't hold. Julius cried out Stella's name, while Arya finally found the answer to Alicia's question. Why did she fight? Now, she knew. She fought for her friends, and she wouldn't let them die. With that realization, she unleashed the full power of Excalibur, obliterating both the Cyclops and the Spear of Sacrifice. At the same time, Tama finally overpowered Orthros, bringing an end to the two-headed beast. The battle was over. Everyone was in awe. Arya had mastered an incredible new ability in the heat of battle. Tama, meanwhile, felt his mana surging before his body finally reverted to his normal cat form. He fell into his favorite spot, right in Arya's arms. Overcome with emotion, she hugged Stella tightly, accidentally crushing Tama between them. Just then, the Lion Group arrived, cheering in celebration of the hero's victory. Meanwhile, back in his world, Visago felt his connection to his monsters sever. Pathetic. How could they lose to such weaklings? Still, it didn't matter. The era of demons was coming. Let the humans enjoy their last moments of peace. Back in Clariel, King Gisel received word of Alessia's victory over Rive and Alps, but Beelzebub's vision had revealed something troubling. Visago was gathering his forces to attack the luminescent village. Arya's heart sank. Alesia, on the other hand, was certain Arya knew exactly why the demons were targeting that place. Without hesitation, Arya spoke up. The Philosopher's Stone. It held a vast reservoir of mana, enough to resurrect the Demon King. Julius immediately declared their next mission: protect the stone at all costs. He called for volunteers, and unsurprisingly, Arya was the first to step forward. This was her homeland at stake. Fairy and Lily joined next, followed by Stella and Vulcan. Tama, reflecting on the situation, knew that this would be the battle for the fate of the world. More than anything, he had to protect his master. Seeing everyone ready to fight, Arya felt a surge of determination. Alesia, watching from the side, couldn't help but smile. Arya had found true companions she could trust. With their goals set, the group prepared to depart for the luminescent village, ready to face whatever lay ahead.